Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 10 in the book of the Gospel of John. So today we're going to hear a new name for God. And without this name, without exaggeration, you cannot have fellowship with God without the reality of this name. You'd have to pay for your own sin. You could never go to heaven. You could never be before a holy God other than as a judged person, condemned, and on your way away from him without this name. This is the name of God that makes intimacy, friendship with God possible. The title for today is Behold the Lamb of God. So the context is this is in John chapter 1. John is answering the Pharisees. Wrapping up yesterday, John answered them, I baptize with water, but among you stands one you do not know, even he who comes after me, the strap of whose sandal I am not worthy to untie. But these things took place in Bethany across the Jordan, where John was baptizing. The next day he saw Jesus coming toward him and said, verse 29, 129, Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Behold the Lamb. So this is connection. If you were a Jew at the time, you couldn't miss the connection with Passover. Passovers where the blood of the lamb is spread over the doorpost after the sacrifice of the lamb. Big commitment on the lamb's part. And the righteous God on fire passes over that house. Judgment is bypassed. It is passed over unless you're the lamb. So the lamb's blood counts for the people in the house. It's effective. It's sufficient. It satisfies this justice of a righteous God. So for 1,500 years approximately, the Jewish family, which is now a nation, used to be just a couple of people, now it's a nation, has been practicing this, imitating this, remembering it year by year, flirting with these symbols, remembering the ceremony. Just like every year you have a birthday, it doesn't mean that you're born again, but you remember. I remember. You keep going back to this. So here now, John is saying we have a new Lamb who is perfect, sufficient. And at the time of the event, when John said this, he says, "Behold the Lamb." Now, where was Jesus' blood? It was inside of him. But hinted at for all the Jews is the substitutionary blood of the Lamb that's going to be spilled outside. They would have understood this. So here we have a new Lamb. Behold the Lamb of God. Now he's perfect. He's effective. He's sufficient. Now, it must have caused the Jews to say, hey, I wonder, is this lamb's blood going to be spilled? Or I wonder how this lamb will take away the sin. That's what the lamb is doing. So don't get me wrong. Even though it says he takes away the sins of the world, doesn't mean we live in a sinless world. What it does mean is that now we live in a world where the problem of sin has a solution. So one of my favorite questions, and I think is a great spiritual question to keep asking, particularly non-believers, is what will you do about your sin problem? What John is saying is, hey, here we have hope. There's a lamb. And can his blood count? And will it? He kind of raises that question. Now, this is a new name for God, and I love new names for God because it means that in the history of the world, there never before has God been understood and elucidated in this particular way. And in a sense, this is a new revelation of God that has never been experienced, never been taught, never been given to mankind, and then now, behold, the Lamb of God. Here it is, plopped in your lap. It's a new revelation for God. He's saying, I want you to understand God in a new way. The 1,500 years of the Passover, it helps. But it gives new meaning to the Passover as a remembrance, and it's been pointing to this for more than 1,000 years. So anybody who keeps celebrating the Passover at this moment in time, in today's day, or at least a couple years down the road after Jesus' ministry is finished, totally misses this point, the Lamb of God. This Lamb, capital L, is the beginning of the last Passover. So this is a name that starts on this day that we're reading about, and it is a name that never, ever ends. The new names of God, write this down, the new names of God are new only once. Then they're eternal. So why is that? It's because God doesn't change, because the truth that is revealed by this new name is a truth that remains forever. So Jesus here gets a new forever name, which is the Lamb of God. So when we go to heaven, imagine this, when we will see him as lamb, slain lamb, sacrificed lamb, effective lamb. This vision of him that John is starting out with will never go away. On day 1, we'll see him as lamb. Day 10,000, lamb. Day 1,000,000, lamb. So we get a glimpse of that in Revelation. Now, John is the author of this book of the Gospel of John, as well as the book of Revelation. And John gets to go full circle in seeing Jesus introduced as lamb in the Gospel of John. And then he gets this fast forward vision down the corridors of time at some future date in heaven. Revelation 7, verse 9. After this I looked, John talking, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with one loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." So here are the implications for us. I follow the Lamb right now, and I will always follow the Lamb. I depend upon his effective, sufficient, and desperately needed work, which is to bleed, to give his life, to be the sacrifice, to be the Passover. I need him to satisfy this penalty for sin and to make access with God possible. So without the Lamb, you can't have fellowship with God. No Lamb equals no be with me. So this Lamb is absolutely critical. Without the completion of this Lamb of God concept, and it goes to the cross, this concept that is represented and encapsulated in the name, the Lamb, you can never know God in any other way other than judge. No Lamb equals judgment all the time. So the Lamb makes friendship with God possible, adoption by him, intimacy, and even worship. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the Lamb of God.